Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. All praise be to Allah, the cherisher and sustainer of the world, and blessings and peace be upon our Prophet Muhammad and upon his family and his companions. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, everyone. Thank you for joining week 7 of our series, Understanding the Black American Experience and Unpacking Racism. This is a Central Jersey Masajid initiative, and we thank all the masajids who have helped make this happen. Last week, we had Imam Bashir address two prominent figures in history, Elijah Muhammad and Imam Waris Din Muhammad, and we learned to carry a deeper appreciation for their work and the road they paved. Today, we are continuing exactly where we left off by having Ustaza Maryam Sharif and Ustaza Aisha Al-Adawiya talk in depth about Malcolm X. Ustaza Maryam will be starting us off, and later we will have Ustaza Aisha, who I will introduce in more detail. At this point, we're all very familiar with Ustaza Maryam, as this is her third session with us. She's an instructor at Rabata Institute, and we are so glad to have her with us yet again. If you have any questions or concerns at this point, or at any point, please feel free to post them on YouTube or Facebook as a comment, and we'll have a Q&A at the very end. At this point, I'd love to introduce Ustaza Maryam. Ustaza Maryam, you have the floor.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. As-salatu was-salam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. La ilaha illa anta subhanaka in kuntum min adh-dhalimin. Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, please accept from us. Ya Allah, please accept those du'as that our ancestors made that came to these shores, that were made, who were forced to come to these shores, that made dua that there would be Muslims in this land of America. Allahumma ameen, Allahumma ameen, Allahumma ameen. I begin with what's in a name. Malcolm X, Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz. Next slide. So here are some beautiful pictures of Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz. One as a child, one when he was imprisoned, one when he got out of prison, and one in his ever pensive stance. He was born Malcolm Little in Omaha, Nebraska in 1925, May 19th. He resided in various locations in Michigan while in foster care. Then in 1941, he moved in with his sister Ella Collins in Boston. 2 years later after that, he migrated to Harlem, New York. And he became enamored with this fast-paced hustle of the city's underworld, where he was known as Detroit Red for his being from Detroit and his flaming red hair. While incarcerated in Massachusetts in the prison system for a burglary, he began studying the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And under the doctrine of the Nation of Islam, he was known as Malachi Shabazz. Now, I want to talk about this name because names have meanings. Names especially have meanings in the Nation of Islam. And what is this X business? So there's a debate about where does this last name come from, Shabazz. And then Malachi is a biblical name of an angel. So there's several name changes. And so people were given an X. They had to write to Elijah Muhammad in the Nation of Islam because they were not supposed to take on enslaved names. And so the name or the last name that they were going by was most likely not the name of their ancestors, but yet the name of the person who might have been a slave holder. So hence the X. So there's a few etymological relations to the Shabazz. First one is it a Persian name used in India, Turkish, and for Pakistani Muslims, coming from the American Muslims' claim that the name is from Arabic word shab, the people, and az, to be mighty or glorious, like Allah's Aziz or Izzah. And then there's a similar, but etymologically not related, Persian name meaning Shahbaz, meaning royal falcon. But we know that word Shah in Urdu, and yes, in Urdu is king or royalty, nobility. So this name is popular with some Bosnians, Turkish, Indian, and Pakistani Muslims. So in the Nation of Islam, they said that they were descendants. They didn't want to be called so-called Negroes. They are descendants of the Asian Black nation and the tribe of Shahbaz. Now, this tribe of Shahbaz, according to the Nation of Islam mythology, was the name of a great Black architect and engineer of ancient Africa, who was like, you could call him like a patriarch of the Black race. And he represented Malcolm's role as a patriarch in the new nation under Elijah Muhammad, or the one that the Nation of Islam sought to build. So hence, this is where his name comes. Now, we're going to switch to, because he is another name change. So he signs things in different ways. Now, he said, I'm for truth, no matter who tells it. I'm for justice, no matter who it is for or against. I'm a human being first and foremost. And as such, I'm for whoever and whatever benefits humanity as a whole. Now, we know a lot about him, and some things we still don't know. So this story of Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz must be told. So again, I just disseminated to another name. His childhood was tumultuous and torturous, and it was riddled with racism. He found himself in prison where people saw him as the shaitan incarnate. They used to call him that. What they failed to notice was his human potential on account of this. And he possessed so much potential. He was very intelligent and a very good orator and just a really good, intelligent person. And in prison, he also, I think you should try this exercise. He read through the whole dictionary. So I tried to go through just a section, just like A's. And then it's just amazing how much you can learn going through the dictionary this way. So the Nation of Islam, as we discussed in previous sessions, is a proto-Islamic movement of the 20th century. And its core beliefs were pitted against Orthodox Islamic beliefs. However, there were still beliefs that were Islamic, and the nomenclature was Islamic, and it helped the African Americans jumpstart or make a solid platform to rediscover their sense of identity, dignity, and confidence. So while they used this Islamic terminology, there was a chasm, if you will, between the Orthodox Islamic teachings and what Nation of Islam stood for many years. Do remember that this is during the time of the civil rights movement. Next slide. So I want to talk about some of the women in Malcolm X's life, because after all, they were the ones who buttressed him and helped make him who he is. And this picture shows the great women behind and in front of Malcolm X. This is Ella Collins. And Ella Collins was the half-sister of Malcolm Little. Now, he did come to live with her in Boston, and you can see the middle picture. That is the home that they stayed in. Ella was a real estate agent, and she rented to all, Black, white, everyone. She was a fair woman. She also was a divorcee 3 times. And Malcolm describes in a letter from Hajj how she was a big, black, very strong Georgian woman. And she was very much so into civil rights. And she worked as Congressman Adam Clayton Powell's secretary. She also was a manager of her mother's grocery store. And again, she owned real estate and rented it out. She helped establish a masjid in Boston, and we're going to see that masjid. And that masjid I used to frequent, and my aunt and uncle got married there about 40 years ago. And she also built a daycare center attached to it. And she became a Sunni Muslim in 1959. She also founded a Muslim school. It was called the Sarah Little School of Preparatory Arts in Boston. And they taught Islamic studies and Arabic, even though she didn't know how to read and write Arabic. She knew how to hire people who did. So she was just a very proud Black woman, a proud Black Muslim woman. So she lived in Roxbury, and currently at the Islamic Society of Boston Cultural Center, they used to have a school named after her. It was called the Ella Collins Institute. She was supposed to send herself to Hajj. She saved up, and she ended up allowing her little brother to go in 1964. She also paid for his funeral and all of his business expenses after his assassination. And she ended up taking over an organization that he founded that I'm going to talk about in a moment. She also was the patron of 35 scholarships to Al-Azhar University in Cairo, Egypt, and from the University of Ghana to students wishing to study overseas. Allah bless her, because so many of us would not be here if it were not for her patron. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Next slide. So this is the picture of the top left-hand corner is Al-Malcolm, well, we call it Al-Hajj Al-Malik Shabazz, or Malcolm X Masjid Mosque in Harlem. And there's a little sign in the bottom left-hand corner. The top right-hand corner is MIB. And it says who the Imam is there, who is Imam Talib, wonderful brother. So this is where Malcolm X, he teeter-tottered in between those two places, the Mosque of, well, we call it the Mosque of Islamic Brotherhood, and Imam Talib is the Imam there in Harlem. A beautiful place, mashallah. And then the bottom right-hand corner, that used to be the place where, this is in Boston, so this used to be where Malcolm X used to preach in Boston. It is now called Masjid al-Quran, and it's still standing. And they have a Muslim women's shelter next door, and also own the property where they used to have the schools next door. Next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about Dr. Betty Shabazz, because again, we don't talk enough about the women in Malcolm's life who was responsible for his being increasingly popular and just effective. She was, Dr. Betty, Allah yarhamha ameen, was an American educator and civil rights advocate. And you're going to notice this thread, all of them were civil rights advocates. And as the wife of Malcolm X, you see they had a lot of children. Alhamdulillah. She attended Tuskegee Institute in Alabama, and she had her first encounter of racism. She ended up joining the Nation of Islam and ended up getting married to Malcolm X in 1958. She left the Nation of Islam along with her husband in 1964. Unfortunately, she was there for the assassination of her husband, and she was left with the responsibility of raising her 6 daughters as a single mother. Allah yarhamha ameen. And she did raise her children as Muslim children as a single mother. She pursued higher education and then went to work at Medgar Evers College in Brooklyn, New York. She also, I remember meeting her at the 96th Street Masjid in New York, the big, beautiful masjid. And I met her at the hands of Ustada Aisha Al-Adawiya. She introduced me to her when I was a baby Muslim. I don't think she remembers that, but I think it was the first time when she went to 96th Street, and I was in awe, and I was really young, and I was so impressed. And I just loved her. She was so incredibly intelligent. SubhanAllah, she died in a tragic fire in 1997. May Allah give her Jannatul Firdaus. Ameen, ameen, ameen. Next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about the global Malcolm. You see all of these pictures. So the bottom left is pictures of Malcolm going to the first MSA in Toronto. So apparently this is in the 60s. And the top right picture is Malcolm X meeting a dignitary in Arabia. And then the one in the middle, which I love so much, is him at Oxford. His oratory skills were really on par, and that is where he delivered a speech. They used to do really nice debates back then, and he sat for this picture. He also had a famous speech at Harvard. I didn't show the image, but till today at Harvard University, where we pray, or that our musalla for makeshift Jummah, is in Lowell Science Center. So in Lowell Hall, it is where he historically gave his speech to a bunch of law school students at Harvard. And then to the left of that picture is Malcolm X and Maya Angelou when he visited Africa. And I'm saying this because when he went, when he made his pilgrimage, which I'm going to talk about very shortly, he was known as the Amriki, the Amriki Muslim, the Muslim who was representing America. And people were so excited, and they were super curious because they hadn't met an American Muslim. And so he had celebrity status, and they wanted to hear about what was going on there and the plight that Malcolm X talked about in his love for impoverished people, the downtrodden, and the oppressed. And he just wanted to fight racism, and he found that he had an audience through these venues. Next slide. So I love these pictures because these are pictures right before, most of them are right before he died. And the first two in the top left-hand corner are at the Imam Ali Pasha masjid in Egypt. And it's a beautiful old masjid if you've never been there, but capturing that moment of his ibadah, making dua and making salat is just wonderful. And then the one on the middle left is a picture of him in African regalia. So he did, when he visited some Muslim majority countries, he also visited some other countries in which he talked about politics and what systems worked as far as what they were doing in their local politics and their global politics. And he wanted to talk to them about their plight. And then the top right-hand corner is him meeting some folks in Egypt in his travels. And then the letter that he hand wrote back, which I'm going to read to you in just a moment, just a portion, because it was a 6-page letter. But you see, I'm with his one of his daughters, Ilyasa Shabazz. That was at the World Parliament of Religion in 2015 in Utah, and she just came out with a book, and she towers over me. She's very much so like her father. She's courageous, emboldened, and just has stature. And so that is us there. And I want to talk a little bit about his organization, the Organization of Afro-American Unity. It was a Pan-Africanist organization founded by Malcolm X in 1964. And it was modeled on the Organization of African Unity, which had impressed Malcolm X during his visit to Africa in April and May in 1964. Now, that organization doesn't exist anymore, but he was definitely trying to globally talk about the oppressed and reach a wider audience. And as I mentioned, in those global international travels, he was able to do that. The one thing I can say about him is he had a very strong conviction, sincerity, and a willpower. Within a short period of time, he transformed the Nation of Islam from a fringe organization to a force to be reckoned with, and was responsible for its exploding membership running into the hundreds of thousands. Now, when he departed, it didn't end well. Him and Imam Warithuddin Muhammad also departed. Allah yarham, Ameen. And I want to just read this letter about his transformation. And again, it is a small portion of the letter. It is not the entire one, but I encourage you. I have some readings that I want to give you. And also, just before I read that, at Ibadan University, he was also named Omowali, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's a Yoruba name, so he had many names. And he said, "Please forgive me if I haven't had a chance to pronounce it properly for 400 years. It means that the dialect, the child has returned. And it was an honor for me to be referred to as a child who had sense enough to return to the land of his forefathers, to his fatherland and to his motherland, not sent back here by the State Department, but come back here of my own free will." He continued, "I've always had the name Malik al-Shabazz on my passport. However, I only use it in the Muslim world. I'll probably continue to use the name Malcolm X as long as the situation that produced it continues to exist. So I remain Malcolm X as long as there is a need to struggle, protest, and fight against the injustices our people are involved in this country." For the remainder of his physical life, he was still a Muslim. He focused on advocating Black nationalism and and empowering people who were impoverished and dispossessed. And he began planning to charge the United States with human rights violations against African Americans at the United Nations. I do want to lastly just read this portion, small portion of the letter to you. Next slide. And I'll be quick. "Never have I witnessed This is a letter that he wrote from Hajj, and it's so beautiful. And so in my History of Islam in America class, my last session is on the pilgrimage, and we always read this portion. Never have I witnessed such sincerity, hospitality, and overwhelming spirit of true brotherhood as it is practiced by people of all colors and races. Here in the ancient Holy Land, the home of Abraham, peace be upon him, Muhammad, peace be upon him, and all the other prophets, peace be upon them, of the Holy Scriptures. For the past week, I have been utterly speechless and spellbound by the graciousness I see displayed all around me by people of all colors. I have been blessed to visit the holy city of Mecca. I have made my 7 circuits around the Kaaba, led by a young mutawif named Muhammad. I drank water from the well of Zamzam. I ran 7 times back and forth between the hills of Mount Safa and Al-Marwa. I have prayed in the ancient city of Mina, and I have prayed on Mount Arafah. There were tens of thousands of pilgrims from all over the world. They were all colors, from blue-eyed blondes to black-skinned Africans, but we were all participating in the same ritual, the honor of Hajar, the honor of Ibrahim, the honor of Ismail, peace be upon them all. Displaying a spirit of unity and brotherhood that my experiences in America had led me to believe never could exist between the white and the non-white. America needs to understand Islam because this is the one religion that erases from its society the race problem. Throughout my travels in the Muslim world, I have met, talked to, and even eaten with people who in America would have been considered white, but the white attitude was removed from their minds by the religion of Islam. I have never before seen sincere and true brotherhood practiced by all colors together, irrespective of their color. You may be shocked by these words coming from me, but on this pilgrimage, what I have seen and experienced has forced me to rearrange much of my thought patterns previously held and to toss aside my previous conclusions. This was not too difficult for me, despite my firm convictions. I have always been a man who tried to face facts and to accept the reality of life as new experience and new knowledge unfolds. I have always kept an open mind, which is necessary to be flexible. That must go hand in hand with every form of intelligent search for truth. During the past 11 days here in the Muslim world, I have eaten from the same plate, drunk from the same glass, and slept from the same rug, while praying to the same God with fellow Muslims whose eyes were the bluest of blue, whose hair was the blondest of blonde, and whose skin was the whitest of white. And in the words and in the deeds of the white Muslims, I felt the same sincerity that I felt among the Black African-American Muslims of Nigeria, Sudan, and Ghana. We were truly all the same, brothers. Because their belief is in one God, had removed the white from their minds, the white from their behavior, and the white from their attitude. I could see from this that perhaps if white Americans could accept the oneness of God, then perhaps too they could accept in reality the oneness of man, and cease to measure and hinder and harm others in terms of their differences in color. With racism plaguing America like an incurable cancer, the so-called Christian white American heart could be more receptive to a proven solution to such a destructive problem. Perhaps it could be in time to save America from imminent disaster, the same destruction brought upon Germany by racism that eventually destroyed the Germans themselves. Jazakallahu kulli khair.
Thank you so much for that. That was wonderful. And I really love the excerpt that you read aloud. It just reminds us how captivating he was, and his word choice, and just, what he had to say was just so captivating. So thank you for sharing that. At this point, we are going to have Ustaza Aisha Al-Adawiya. Ustaza Aisha Al-Adawiya is the founder and president of Women in Islam, Inc., an organization of Muslim women which focuses on human rights and social justice. Ms. Al-Adawiya also represents Muslim women's non-governmental organizations at United Nations Forum, as well as coordinating Islamic input for the preservation of Black religious heritage documentation project of the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture. She organizes and participates in conferences and other forums on Islam, gender equity, conflict resolution, cross-cultural understanding, and peace building. Ms. Al-Adawiya is consultant to numerous interfaith organizations and documentary projects on the Muslim American experience, while also serving on the boards of numerous organizations related to the interests of the global Islamic community. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Ustaza Aisha. You have the floor.
Assalamu alaikum. I think that I'm audible, yes?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, very good.
Yes.
So, thank you so much for this invitation. I want to say I appreciate the presentation from Sister Mariam, some historical perspective. I'll be more informal because the material that was presented to us often is either overlooked or not known. So it's important historical information that we need to access and weave into our lives. At the same time, I want to point out the place where we are currently and how Malcolm X's teachings and lifestyle and position actually helps us who are continuing to struggle against white supremacy, racism, bigotry, and all of the other injustices that impact the lives of people who are disenfranchised. So I would be remiss if I didn't bring this part of Malcolm's legacy forward. So this is where I will land. I want to say that I think that we take heart in Hajj Malik Shabaz's last message to us about his experience on Hajj. And I'm sure that he would be horrified at what he sees today in our Ummah and the struggles against racism generally in the larger society and in the Muslim community, the Muslim Ummah itself. So these are hard truths that we need to get at when we bring forth and speak about Malcolm X's legacy. So this is where I want to be to encourage us to be brave enough and strong enough to tackle some of the inconsistencies that we carry as Muslims and struggle. Just excuse me one moment. I think I'm going to have to sneeze. Excuse me. To bring forth, I think I'm unmuted now. As we struggle to bring forth to make real Malcolm's legacy in our lives. So I want to say also one aspect of Hajj Malik Shabaz's life is that of his early childhood. We have to understand that he did not just happen out of nowhere. He had strong parents. He was raised and mentored in a strong Garveyite family. So it's important for us currently to understand the importance and the significance of how we raise our children and what they're exposed to at a very early age so that they have a foundation to build on and to live on when they get into the society and have to face so many challenges that we're all aware of these days. And I don't think that we need to enumerate them here. But this is a very important facet of Haj Malik's life. And I always encourage scholars and specifically Muslim scholars to tackle this history and bring it forth and make it available to younger generations. So that I want to say, I love the idea of having these talks to expose our community, specifically again to the history of struggle in this United States and what it is that we have to do as Muslims in this part of the world to bring about positive change in our society. As you all know, we are in a critical time here and globally as well. And I think that Muslims have a unique responsibility. If we claim our love for Malcolm X, Hajj Malik Shabazz, that we know that if he was with us now, he would be on the front lines. He would really be our leader in tackling, some of the gross injustices that we are living with these days. And again, we don't have to enumerate the unbelievable tragedies that are befalling people, the murders that are happening to young people, to young black men, to young black women, to immigrants, to we can just go on. So I find it very important that when we reference Malcolm, that yes, we love him and he remains our black shining prince. And in that context, we have to place him front and center in the struggle for human rights and social justice. We understand that his foundation was Islam. He was a spiritual man. It's another aspect of the man that we neglect. We like to talk about his prowess and his oratory and how fierce he was and these things. But we have to also understand that he was a Muslim and he was a serious practiced Muslim. So, and that informed him, it buoyed him, it strengthened him, gave him the courage to stand in the face of all kinds of onslaught on him. As you know, he was targeted by all of our state agencies, the CIA, the FBI, the Klan, others that we may not even know about. And if we do the research again, we can unearth many of the now declassified documents that tell a horrible story of how he was hounded. So, still, he stood very strong and powerful for us as an example. When we read in Quran those teachings that tell us to stand up for justice, even if it's against ourselves. Again, Malcolm X epitomizes that. I mean, he was fearless. He had a calling. These are not professional leanings, as many of us seem to understand that in our professional lives these days. Um, what we do is our job description. But Malcolm had a spiritual calling to stand up for people who were oppressed. Yeah. And so I think that's the example that we need to recall, again, to make ourselves strong in the face of all kinds of atrocities that are coming at us as a community, as a Muslim community, as a global Muslim community. We will understand the necessity of having that kind of fortitude, that kind of platform from which to spring. So again, he continues to be my mentor. And I hope that as younger generations learn more about him, they too will be inspired, and encouraged to throw off the shackles of slavery and fear, yeah, and stand for what we all know is right. And also, I want to say that at one of his talks, I think it was at Oxford, when he talked about that he would work with anyone. He didn't care what color they were, right? So long as they wanted to change the miserable condition, that we were living in. So I share that sentiment, and I think that is something again that in a polarized world, when we are always talking necessarily about black and white and the atrocities that happen in that context, that Malcolm stood for working across the boundaries. Yeah. So long as people stood with integrity and dignity and were willing to support that. So just reminders. What I would like to do, I mean, I could just talk a lot about Malcolm because I love him. This is the man who changed my life drastically and all for the better, and we continue to draw on his words, that are still with us, as if he's talking to us today. It's just amazing the gift that Allah gave to him for us. So we have to make sure that we know this history, that we learn this history. We have to make sure that we expose our children to it at a very, very early age, and we have to understand that you are not going to get this exposure in the Ivy League institutions. Yeah, I mean, it's just not equipped or inclined to do that kind of history. But we must create alternative mechanisms to learn this history. And we have very little choice. Uh, and when I speak like this, often people misunderstand me that I minimize the importance of going to Ivy League schools and getting so many degrees, and that is certainly not my intention. But we also understand that the academia is what it is, and it's designed, for a specific function. So we as a community, as a global ummah, we have responsibility to create the environments, the learning environments, where we can access our own glorious history, really. And Malcolm is not singular. I mean, there he's standing on the shoulders of many people, who have walked this path. And when we learn this history, we understand that this is not the path of one man, but it is a charge for the Islamic community to take up, this mantle and make sure that we pass this baton to our children, so that when their time comes, they are strong enough, they are powerful enough to stand up for justice, no matter what. And I think that when we do that, uh, we will find that we will be in a much better position to defend our rights as well as the rights of people around us. And those people do not have to be Muslims. It means the human family. We have a responsibility to speak truth to power, as we say, and to stand up for people who are oppressed, no matter who they are or where they come from. So that's what Malcolm represented. And of course, the women in Malcolm's life were phenomenal. Dr. Betty Shabazz was a personal friend of mine. And, you don't sit and see your husband gunned down in front of you, and think that, life is going to go on as usual. So she struggled a lot. But Alhamdulillah, Allah gave her a path to continue to stand in the face of all kinds of atrocities, to create a legacy, a living legacy for her husband, so that future generations, would be able to see the place where he was martyred, and to be able to carry on the struggle. And I am waiting to see, really, and I hope while I'm still alive, that I can see people, Muslims and those who are not Muslims, continue to travel to bring that challenge to the United Nations uh, to fight for the human rights of people and African American Muslims, citizens of the United States and of the world, to challenge those mischief makers for the atrocities that they inflict on people here in the United States and around the world. So we still have this work ahead of us, and there's no there's no getting around it. We must carry this mantle, and I think that, inshallah, this is a wonderful time for us to begin to educate ourselves about our martyrs, about our people who stood with incredible dignity in the face of all kinds of atrocities and remained steadfast in their principles to the extent that all these years later, they're still an inspiration to us. And we call back daily to refresh ourselves, remind ourselves of the struggles that they engage, of their words that still inspire us and wake us up every morning to do this work all over again. So may Allah uh, give us the humility, first and foremost, the inclination, the inspiration to delve into this incredible history, because our ancestors, again, uh, are looking for us. They're calling us to speak up, to stand up and be present. And no matter where we are, no matter what part of the world we're living, to never give up uh, our dignity for anyone. And the teaching that um, if we see an evil, to stop it with our hands, and if we are not able to do that, that we speak about that. We broadcast. That this is injustice and it's wrong. And the weakest form is to just feel, in our hearts that it's really a terrible thing. But the most meritorious resistance is to stop it with our hands. So we have many ways to fight, and it does not always include guns and wars. Uh, Words are powerful. Someone said that the pen is mightier than the sword. So we have so many avenues, and supports from our Creator to help us fight this struggle. This is a sacred struggle, and we must fight this struggle with dignity, with honor, and never lose sight of who we are as principled people, and join forces with other people who are already in the struggle. Many people who are leading the struggle. We need to be there with them and fighting with them because the struggle is not just about Muslims, but it's about humanity. So I think, again, we're in a wonderful place to build coalitions, to strengthen coalitions, to keep our eyes wide open and on the prize, and especially now at this time. It's a great time to be alive, and our work is cut out for us. So find your passion, support young people. Older people need to mentor younger people, and when the time comes, be willing to hand over the mantle, to give them the baton, and let them run with it. And elders will be on the sidelines, eager and ready to support and mentor them in any ways that we can. But the time is now to step up and seize the moment, inshallah. So I want to thank you for inviting me to chat. This is my favorite subject. I want to encourage you to uh, reach out and support the children of Hajj Malik Shabazz and Dr. Betty Shabazz, because these are his children. This is his family. And if we say we love him, we have to love his family. So let us do that, inshallah. So I hope that I can stop now and allow some time to engage with our audience, because I feel that often talking heads are just that, and we need to hear more from the people who show an interest in trying to amplify the message that we're trying to carry. And when we do that, we tend to learn from each other, inshallah. So again, thank you, and may Allah help us at this time in our journey and strengthen us and give us all of the resources that we need to be successful, inshallah. So thank you again. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam. Ameen. Thank you so much for that. Someone actually had asked if you could speak a little bit more about Dr. Betty Shabazz, as she was Imam Malcolm's partner, and a little bit about her personal relationship, between the two, and if you could just speak a little bit more about her as well.
Well, yes, I mean, Dr. Shabazz was a phenomenal woman. you know, um, I mean, Mariam kind of highlighted some of her accomplishments, but there are those untold stories about Dr. Shabazz that many people don't know about. She was a very private woman, and she would do things, to support people without any fanfare, without any press release or media. She just would help people where she found them. So this is something that's really remarkable about her. As she walked, I mean, she would carry money in her hands, and just hand it off to people that she saw who needed that, unwed mothers, single mothers. She was amazing. When it came time for me to make Hajj, Dr. Shabazz, um, she used to stop by the house, regularly when she was traveling, and wherever in the world she was, when she came back, she would come by Harlem, which is where I live, and we would sit in her car and just talk for hours, and then she would move on. But this time, I had told her, we were chatting one day, and I told her that I was doing my will, and she said, when black people talk about wills, it means death. So like, no, but when we do that, we don't know if we will return, so we try to get our affairs in order. So this particular day, we didn't sit outside in the car. She came inside the house, right? Sat down, and our routine was to always make tea for her, my husband and I. And at one point, she went into her bag and pulled out this wad of money, you know, and put that in my hand, right? Just very quietly, and said, "This is for you." Yeah. And don't spend it on, don't give it to anyone. Use it on yourself, right? Because she was aware that on Hajj, people are struggling, and many people need help, so you tend to give away what you have. But so she said, "This is for you, and don't give it away to anyone," right? Because she wanted me to benefit from that, money that she had given me. So what we did was, I mean, this is something, unusual for Dr. Shabazz. She would always sit in her car, and we would sit there and talk for hours. This time she got out of the car, came into the apartment, and, she had to hear and share what she wanted to share with me and prepare me for the Hajj journey. So I remember that. And when it was time for me to come back, um, we went shopping and bought jewelry, right? And one of the things that I bought was a replica of the Kaaba, right? This lovely little necklace, right? So we bought one of those for her, and I had one. So one of the things that we would do with Dr. Shabazz also is, whenever she was traveling, whenever she came back to the States or from wherever she was, she would let me know, "Well, I'm here," and we would always take her to this restaurant that our friends owned. These were Afghani people, and the food was delicious, and everybody loved, the food because it wasn't too spicy. It was just great food. So she liked that, right? So this particular day, we said, "Okay, we're going to take you out to dinner. So we went. She loved the food. And this was the opportunity to give her the gift that we had brought for her. Now, the backstory is that because Dr. Shabazz was left with her daughters to raise on her own after her husband has been assassinated, she identified very powerfully with Hajar, our mother Hajar, right? So she was so connected to this story and to this woman, so that at our dinner, when it was time to give her her gift, which was this Kaaba, we just opened up the gift. You know, first was a beautiful scarf, and she liked that, and then we said, and this one, and you don't see a woman like Dr. Shabazz cry. You know, I mean, she was just powerful in her presence, right? But she just wept, you know, at the idea, you know, that this was a replica of the Kaaba, and the whole remembrance of Hajj's struggle, you know, uh, to be left alone in the desert and then to struggle, you know, for sustenance, relying only on Allah for her and her son. So that's one of the stories that I love to tell about Dr. Shabazz. She loved to listen to Quranic recitations. Sometimes we would be out doing things, and she would have this walkie, these things, the cassette, yeah, with the headphones in her ears. And one sister came and asked her, what are you listening to, right? So she just took off the headphones and let her listen. She was listening to Quranic recitation, you know. So whenever Ramadan came, you know, I'd get this call like, I think it's Ramadan coming, right? You know, just so she was, you know, this was a family that many people still to this day do not want the family of Haj Malik Shabazz to be Muslim, to be associated with Muslims. So she had to fight to be Muslim, you know, to hold on to her identity as a Muslim woman. And what I did after she passed away, I established the Dr. Betty Shabazz Award Ceremony, and we did that for nearly 20 years, right, in her honor, to identify women in the community who often do incredible work, but they never get the recognition that they deserve. And so we would identify women, Muslim and non-Muslim women, who do incredible work in the community, and give this award, this Dr. Betty Shabazz Award, to them as a token of our appreciation for the sacrifices that they make for us every day. So Dr. Shabazz was amazing. She truly was. Yes. There's so many stories. One day I'll write, inshallah.
Please do write something. I mean, these are stories, you know, we can't find from anyone else or anywhere else. And like you said, the Ivy Leagues, the universities, we don't get that information from them. And there's so much that, you know, they hide or isn't given to us. So, you know, we really rely on people like you to tell us the full comprehensive story. So
I
thank
would
you.
encourage
We
you
do have a
also, you know, as an organization, to establish um, some kind of alternative educational mechanism, reading circles, something. And you know, we've created lists now, reading lists, and especially in the heat of this current situation, that the need is on us, you know, and especially again in the Muslim community, to learn this history. And we have a lot of written materials now. So to create environments where you can come together, read these books, and have a discussion about them, so that you own the knowledge and not wait for it to be given to you. So there are a lot of things that we can do. We can talk about this some more later, inshallah.
Yeah, those are some great ideas. Thank you. So we do have a couple of questions, and you know, I'm just going to read them aloud, and whoever would like to answer can. So one of the questions was, what was Malcolm X's practical suggestions for people to start making a difference? And I'm sure there's a lot, but what are some practical, I guess, suggestions for us now, I guess, in this time that were given to him from him? Yeah.
Oh, well, I can go. Yes. Well, the practical application of Malcolm's messages, is that first and foremost we have to know who we are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have to uh, become fearless enough, you know, to speak that truth. And again, in the face of often abuse, or rejection, but it becomes an ethical question that we have to live into. So I think that he would tell us, to do just that. Our spiritual foundation is critical here because, he would say things like, if you don't stand up for something, you'll fall for anything. And that is so true now. We see so many of our people just like feathers in the wind. They'll go wherever the perks are, and there are many perks out there that are given to people who compromise their integrity. So again, Malcolm would be telling us, don't do that, do the opposite. Even if it's against yourself. And as you know, when he was assassinated, other people in the community had to come to the aid of his own family because he was not about getting wealth and hoarding wealth and buying mansions and things. He loved the people and he sacrificed everything for the people, and we have to be willing to do that too, inshallah.
Another question is, well, someone wrote, one is stunned to find out the number and power of his enemies who actively tried to tear him down. Can you please share something from his spiritual side which helped him stand tall against his enemies?
Mario?
I'm just going to give a prelude to Sada Aisha. When Allah loves someone, then everything in creation loves them too. And the angels praise that person or that thing, and the animals praise that person or that thing, and the trees and everything praises that person. And this person was absolutely Malcolm X, which is why he was so effective. And those who read his autobiography, so many people have converted and have been moved and transformed because, as I mentioned, they called him the Shaitan in the prison. And he went from that to the prince. And he respected himself and he respected others. He loved himself and he loved others. And he loved them because he had that taqwa, the God consciousness. He had courage. May Allah bless us with that. He had spiritual fortitude. May Allah bless us with that. Sincerity and certitude in La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah.
Well, one thing about Malcolm's different labels during different times in his life, the label of Shaitan, or Satan in the prisons. Dr. Shabazz says that he got this label because he was fierce. Prisons are not vacation resorts, and people have to find ways to protect themselves. So he got the reputation that this was a person that you didn't want to mess with. So hence the label, Satan, that he was fierce, in establishing his own integrity, even in prison. It's another conversation also that we need to have later about I'm thinking about Imam Jamil Alameen, and we have, sorry, we have a responsibility now, that we don't abandon our leaders when they are in need, and we again, we are called to take action here because it's long overdue. Yeah.
We also have something else. What
I'm
are
sorry.
some?
Did we? Well, I think Mariam answered your question.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
No, thank you.
It
I'm
was
just going to the
so
next one. I'm going to the next one. What are some practical suggestions on how we can incorporate Malcolm X into our Islamic schools? What books to read and how to structure the modules? And I think, Ustaza Mariam, you had this on your PowerPoint as well. But if you guys have any more resources, and I would actually add something to this question that I'm curious about. What can we do in our masajids as well to honor Dr. Betty Shabazz's legacy and even Malcolm X and all the women around him? What can our messages do realistically? And are there any events that you think we should have or just further discussions?
Well, there's a lot that you can do. I mean, if you, I think also that our massages have been closed for so long that we need to fling open the doors and let the light in. Let some fresh air in. And this is one of those opportunities, for you, as members of various communities, to create kind of these kinds of programs again, to expose our young people, our children, to our legacies. Malcolm is one of them, but we have so many others as well. So we have a responsibility to do this. But as I said, I mean, we didn't. I mean, it's easy and it's fun and it brings you inspiration too, to name something in the honor of someone, right? And
Mm,
then, you can create scholarships and opportunities for young people to do essays. And, I think we need to focus more on the arts and give young people an
mm,
opportunity to express themselves artistically. I mean, I think, Islam is replete with, with references to beauty, right? So
mm,
we have to reclaim the beauty in our religion. And part of that beauty is through Islamic art. So
mm,
let us encourage that and do that. And in that context, you can do so many things to honor Dr. Shabazz and Haj Malik Shabazz. And of course, I'd love to talk with you again about how I can be useful in that regard. Someone mentioned the autobiography, but I'm on staff at the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture also. And you mentioned, I mean, we have a lot of resource material there that, again, we need to take full advantage of. So now, because of the pandemic, we're virtually closed. I mean, there are a few opportunities for on site things, but you can access a lot of material on the internet. So go
mm,
to schomburgcenter.org. It's schomburg.org, and just see what's out there. And we need scholarships. For I've been longing for a long time to have a Malcolm X fellowship at the Schomburg Center.
Allah.
You know, I mean, I want Muslims to come in there and do the work. Yeah, we have a scholars in residence program that's started in the 1980s, and it's still going. So look online and see what's there, and write your proposals, submit your proposals, and go for it. And in the communities, in the masjid, let the young people do research trips, research projects, and then bring up these incredible inspirational resources that we have, because we need them now. I mean, they are speaking to us now. So despite all of the confusion and nonsense that's happening around us now, our people have been solid and on point, forever. So go back and I think of this Sankofa, you know, Sankofa, you know, go back and get it.
mm,
You have to know where you came from in order to forge a future, to go
mm,
forward. So this is important. So it's great work. So young people who are inclined to do the work, come and do the work. We need you to do that.
And I would add, so I know at the first talk we did, I mentioned at Rabata, we focus on a woman a year for Women's History Month. And I mentioned that we did do Clara Muhammad, and I really would love to do Dr. Betty Shabazz and Ella Collins, because of what they both represent. So a curriculum to me could look like, with Dr. Betty Shabazz, the importance of getting an education, who are important single mothers in Islam, like Maryam alayha salam, like Hajar became a single mother, and tying it into Dr. Betty's story. And then Ella Collins talking about the importance of being a patron to those who want to be educated, and maybe she physically couldn't go, but she got other people to go, and making like a Sunday school curriculum or putting it in a regular school curriculum. Ours is for regular school. And then the 3 books that I mentioned, and there's so many, but I really wanted to highlight these 3. The Seventh Child, so we know, like, we love odd numbers in Islam, and Malcolm was the 7th child, and it's called The Seventh Child, a family memoir of Malcolm X by Rodnell Collins, who is the son of Sister Ella. And he's a very sweet man. May Allah preserve him. And then the autobiography of Malcolm X, which was told by or narrated by Malcolm X and Alex Haley, just because it's available in your local library. It's great. For some reason, it resonates with people. And I think it's a great book for interfaith, for people to understand how someone can transform. And then a book by Ilyasa, one of his daughters, the boy who grew up to be Malcolm X. She has a few books, and some of the other daughters have other books, but I really like this one because it talks about his boyhood and how and focuses on that, and it's written by her, so there's something about that. And then there's a documentary on Netflix, which I feel is a little controversial, Who Killed Malcolm X, on Netflix. And it's a 6-part series. And I think now at this point, now that we have documents that have been opened from the FBI and other agencies, that we're able to see just information about this person. Why was he so important? And also, when you speak truth to power, how you become a threat. When you're going up against Pharaoh, you will become a threat. But you still have to do what Allah says do, which is be truthful and fight against the oppressors.
Well, the autobiography is a classic,
Yes.
but there are other documents. I mean, the Schomburg Center recently acquired what are known as those hidden chapters. Yeah. So you may, I mean, this is why it's important to come and do the research, so that you have a full picture. These are chapters that were not included in the autobiography, and yeah, so you want to, but this is what scholarship looks like.
Yes.
You go in, you get the research done. It's not about being spectacular, right? I mean, I think that one of the things that we have to train ourselves to do is be humble, to not strive to be exhibitionist, yeah, but to really be truthful and authentic in our work as Muslims, to bring forth the knowledge that we need. Sylviane Diouf talks about hidden evidences of Muslims enslaved in the Americas. And this is a conversation that is now gaining some resonance, but she did this at a time when you were asking scholars what do they look for, because they simply didn't know what to look for. So they were disclaiming a lot of the history because they didn't know the history, right? Or even what to look for when they were doing their research. Things like the autobiography of Omar ibn Said. This document is a beautiful book that a friend of mine, who was a collector of material art, Derek Baird, who bought years ago and finally sold it to the Smithsonian. Yeah, he passed away recently, but there are all kinds of resources out there. I think the most critical part here is to uh, open up the channels within our own environments, like start something in the Islamic school. If you have an Islamic school, if you don't have an Islamic school, do a lecture series for the people who attend the masjid. Show a video that's going to talk about the person and their accomplishments. Many times when we talk about Malcolm, we talk about Malcolm and his times. So that means that people who were around him at the time also, and how did they benefit? Many of those people who have passed on. So we want to create opportunities to get to these people, the ones who are still with us, so that we capture those stories and those histories so that that is not lost to future generations as well. So we have a lot that we can do, inshallah. So let us try to do that. But let us. I mean, I caution. Let us shy away from sensationalism. You know,
Mm.
I mean, we have enough of that. People who are self promoting. They're just looking to build their reputations on other people's misery, and let's shy away from that. Right? Let's be humble, genuine, authentic people who really love our people and care, for our people, and who root our work in the Islamic tradition, because otherwise, why are we here? We have our own rich legacy to build on. So let us learn what that is, and let's amplify that through the work and the messages that we bring forward, inshallah.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the both of you for, gracing us with such wisdom. I mean, I could just listen all day. It was so wonderful, and there was so much that I learned. So thank you. And we really would love to host both of you again, inshallah. And I pray that we have more opportunities to do so. At this point, there aren't any more questions, but and we don't really have much time anymore either. But again, we'd love to host you guys again or do something in continuation. If one of you could just close out with dua, that would be great.
So let Mariam do it. Thank you for inviting me again. It was lovely.
Of course.
Ya Allah, we ask of you, Al-Wadud, make us of those who you mention to the angels and those on earth that you love, and love not against us. Ameen. Ya Rabbil Alameen. Allahumma ajuna minan nar. Ya Allah, please protect us from the fire. Ya Allah. Aghnina bil ilm. Ya Allah, increase us and enrich us in knowledge. Wa zayyina bil hilm, and adorn us and beautify us with forbearance. Wa ikrimna bitaqwa, and make us generous in our God consciousness. Wa jamilna bil afia, and make us, beautify us in your wholeness, in health. Oh Allah, please bless us to be stoic and have tawakkul like Dr. Betty and Ella, and be of support in increasing us in knowledge. Bless us to have taqwa, that God consciousness, the courage, the spiritual fortitude, the sincerity and certitude in La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam. And bless us most of all that we leave behind righteous Muslim successors that will make dua for us and our progeny. Ameen, ameen, ameen.